Today I will be telling you the Indonesian tale of Tattadu. Come join me. Hi everyone, my name is Heidi. I'm a Malaysian author and welcome back. Back in episode 27, we looked at the themes contained in the story of Bawang Merah, Bawang Putih. Link down below if you want to have a look at that episode. Now, I mentioned that one of those themes was sibling rivalry and envy. Envy and jealousy, especially amongst siblings, is such a powerful emotion that it crops up in many fairy tales and folk tales, not just in the Nusantara, but all around the world. So this story is called Tattadu, which means caterpillar, and it comes from South Sulawesi in Indonesia. Let's have a listen to this story. A long time ago, there lived 7 sisters, and the youngest was unmarried, which caused a lot of problems for her because she was constantly taunted and mocked by her older sisters who felt that they were more superior than her, who felt that they had more status because they were married. So youngest, which is her name in the story, was very sad. She was upset. She was a little bit jealous of her sisters. She too wanted the status of being a married woman. One day, as youngest was collecting water from a well, she sat down and she started to cry. She said to herself, she was talking to herself, and she was upset that no one wanted to marry her. She sat down and she made a wish. She said, if only someone would ask me to marry them, I would marry them in a heartbeat, even if that person was a tattadu, a caterpillar. Now, by coincidence, this well was near a huge taro tree, and inside that taro tree there were hundreds and hundreds of caterpillars. And one of those caterpillars, Tattadu, heard her wish and decided, I think I would like to marry this pretty girl. So this caterpillar started following this girl home, but he was really tiny, so it took some time for him to catch up. While she stopped for a rest, the Tattadu began to crawl up her leg. Youngest saw the caterpillar and tried to brush him off. She said, what are you doing? Why are you following me? And to her surprise, Tattadu spoke to her. He said to her, you said that you would marry anyone, even if it's a tattadu, a caterpillar. Youngest was surprised. She didn't realize that anyone had heard her. And she realized that she had made a mistake by making that wish out loud. But it was too late now. She had already made a wish. She had already made a vow. And she accepted her fate. And so that was how youngest was married to Tattadu, the caterpillar. When youngest arrived home, her sisters looked at her. They looked at the caterpillar and they said to her, why did you bring that thing home? And youngest said to them, it is my destiny. I am fated to marry this caterpillar. Her sisters laughed at her. They teased her mercilessly. They said to her, trust you. You can't even get a proper human man to marry you. You can only get a caterpillar. So poor youngest had to endure the taunts of her sisters. Even though now she was married, she had the status of a married woman. But the sisters didn't care. They looked down on her husband because he was an animal. He was just this caterpillar. Tattadu felt sorry for his wife, youngest, and he told her, don't worry, I'm going to make your life better. I'm going to work hard. We're going to be rich. So he told her, I'm going into the jungle. I'm going to farm the land there, and then we'll sell the crops there and we'll be rich. Don't worry, I will make you happy. So little Tattadu crawled all the way to the jungle, which was quite far away, and he was only little, so it took a long time. And when he got there, he worked diligently. He worked hard to gnaw at all the trees there to clear the land. And when that was done, he started to fertilize the land. He started to prepare the soil, and he got some seeds and he began to plant crops. And then one day, by some miracle, his crop of pumpkins grew. Now, these pumpkins were huge. They were beautiful and ripe, and he was very happy. One day, Tattadu opened one of his ripe pumpkins, and he was shocked and pleasantly surprised to find that the pumpkin was filled with treasure. It was filled with gold and diamonds and jewels and coins, and they were rich. So Tattadu brought back this treasure to youngest and they became rich. Now the older sisters became a little bit jealous because now their younger sister was actually quite rich and wealthy and well off, and her husband proved to be very good, very able-bodied, industrious. He said he was going to make them rich, and he actually did it. So they were a little bit jealous, but it didn't matter because, youngest was still married to a caterpillar, a Tattadu. So they still teased her. They're like, oh, you might be rich, but look at your husband. He's so ugly. He's tiny. He's a little caterpillar. And look at our husbands. They're all big and strong and proper humans. So once again, youngest was very upset, and Tattadu could see that. So he said to her, look, I will go on a journey. I've heard of a land where the gods can change your appearance. So I'll go there and I'll ask the gods to change me, to make me into a man just for you. And youngest says, very well, husband, I love you and I'll wait for your return. I'll pray for your safe return. So Tattadu went on a long, arduous journey to this land. And of course, once again, he was just a tiny little caterpillar, so it took years and years to get to this land. But when he got there, he went up to the gods and he asked them, he said, please, can I change my appearance for my wife? She is being teased and taunted by her older sisters. Please turn me into a man. After listening to the plight of Tattadu, the gods there said, you may choose a mole to enter into. There were moles there. And if you choose correctly, you will get your wish. But if you choose wrongly, you might be turned into something that's worse than a caterpillar. So Tattadu agreed, and he walked around. He looked at all the moles. Tattadu selected a mold, and fortunately, it was a good selection. He came out with a body of a man, but unfortunately, he had no head. So the gods said, go climb that tree and see what the people say about you. So Tattadu, the man without the head, climbed up this tall tree. And when he climbed up the tree, the people saw him and they said to each other, what is that strange man doing climbing up that tree? He has no head. So Tattadu climbed back down and he asked the gods, please, can you give me another chance to choose? And the gods took pity on him and they said, very well, you can choose another mold. So once again, Tattadu chose another mold, and fortunately he chose well because not only did he come out with a strong, strapping, young body, he also had a handsome head. He came out gorgeous. He looked like the gods, So the gods said to him, Tattadu, you look pretty good to me, but why don't you climb up that tree and see what the people say about you? So Tattadu, the gorgeous man, climbed up the tree, and when the people saw him, they exclaimed to each other, why is that handsome king climbing up a tree? He should ask his servants to climb up the tree. Then the gods knew that Tattadu had chosen correctly. So Tattadu, the now gorgeous, strapping young man, thanked the gods and he returned home. The gods really liked Tattadu and they said to him, wait, don't go just yet. We are going to give you a magic gift. And they gave him some rice wine in a container. And they said to him, if you use this wisely, it will never become empty. Tattadu thanked the gods once again and he left for home. This time he could travel a little bit faster because now he had manly big legs to walk on. So on the way home, he passed a village and the chief of that village was eyeing his rice wine. The chief said to Tattadu, could you give me a little wine? And Tattadu replied, this is a special wine. I can give you some, but on one condition. If you finish all the wine, I will become your servant. But if you fail to finish it, you and your entire village will become my servants. And the chief was like, oh, this guy is really silly. Of course I can finish that wine. So the chief agreed. But no matter how deeply and how long he drank, he could not finish the rice wine until finally he gave up and he said, fine, we will be your servants. We will follow you wherever you go. So Tattadu went to the next village and the same thing happened. The chief there was very greedy and he said, I can finish this wine and you will be my servants. But he couldn't, of course. So this is what happened. As Tattadu made his way home, he stopped at various villages and made this bet. And in the end, he arrived home with a whole entourage of servants, with riches. Everyone was impressed because there was this rich, handsome king. All the maidens tried to make themselves pretty to attract the attention of the king. They wanted to marry the king. But the king, otherwise known as Tattadu, just headed straight back to his wife's house. Now, the older sisters were there and they could see the handsome, young, strapping man coming towards them. And they decided they wanted to try and catch his attention. So they offered him betel leaves and sirih, but he just ignored them. He said, this is not good enough for me. So the sisters ran home and they put the betel leaves on a golden plate and offered it to Tattadu, not knowing that this was Tattadu. And once again, he said, no, I don't want this. I want something else. And finally, he arrived in front of Youngest, who carried a betel leaf on this old battered plate. And Tattadu looked at his wife. She was beautiful. She was gorgeous. He smiled at her and he took the betel knife. He said to Youngest, don't you recognize me, wife? I am your husband, Tattadu. I have managed to transform my appearance just for you. And Youngest was so happy, but her elder sisters were, you guessed it, they were so jealous because now there has been a subtle shift in their status. Their younger sister was not only married, she was married to a handsome, rich young man. And the elder sisters were not happy. So they looked at their own husbands. You know, they had been married a while. The husbands had put on weight. They weren't as handsome as they were. They were a little bit slovenly and dirty. So they said to their husbands, you go to that country where Tattadu came from and you change your appearance as well. I want a rich, handsome young husband. So these poor husbands of those elder sisters had to go on a long journey to the country where Tattadu had come from. And when they got there, they asked the gods once again, we're here because our wives want us to change our appearance. They want us to be young and handsome again. And the god says, okay, very well, you can choose a mold and let's see what comes out. Unfortunately, they chose unwisely and they were all transformed into animals. So then these animal husbands came back home to their wives, and when the older sisters saw their husband, they couldn't recognize them and they shoot them away. Get out, you beast. But the husband says, look, it's us. We are your husbands. You asked us to go and transform ourselves, but this is what happened. Now the wives, the older sisters regretted their actions, but nothing could be done. They were disgraced and they had to live the rest of their lives married to their animal husbands. Meanwhile, Youngest and Tattadu, the rich, young, handsome, strong man, lived happily ever after. The end. The overall theme of this particular folktale is, of course, sibling rivalry. In particular, the intense competition between the older sisters and the youngest. There's also a secondary theme of an animal husband, which we will go into in future episodes. Stories like this one, Tattadu, Bawang Putih Bawang Merah, Yisian, and the one from Madagascar, The Three Princesses and Prince Adrian Mohamona, they target jealous tendencies and interpersonal conflicts between siblings. This is one of the reasons why these stories strike a universal chord amongst not just adults, but in particular children. If you think about it, children's lives are filled with envy, and stories that include it as a major dynamic help them find a way of dealing with their own jealous tendencies. So stories like this tend to attract very young children. Just like last week's episode from Madagascar, the order of birth plays an important role in the story. However, the story of Tattadu is slightly different in that the 6 older sisters are already married, and it is the youngest who is desperate to get married because she's mocked and ostracized by her sisters. These sisters feel superior, they feel entitled because not only are they older than a youngest, but they have reached a favorable state. They are all married. And in that society, being married puts you in a high status. So these sisters feel very entitled and they feel superior and they rub it in. They tease and mock their younger sister because she's unmarried. Now, youngest is affected by the teasing and the mocking. She gets upset. She gets a little bit jealous, I think. It's not just envy from the part of the older sisters. The youngest one also gets jealous. The youngest actually makes a vow that she will marry anyone who asks her, even if it's a Tattadu, a caterpillar. Youngest agrees to marry Tattadu because she accepts it as her fate, her destiny. But it doesn't make things better because now she's married to a lowly caterpillar, and this results in even more teasing and mocking by her sisters. However, it turns out that Tattadu is not only industrious, he's hardworking, and he manages to improve their economic circumstances. And as a result, the sisters stop their teasing for a while. They can see that, oh, actually, even though he's a caterpillar, he works hard, he provides for her, he's a good husband. So after a while, the sisters stop teasing. But still, youngest is unhappy because her husband's caterpillar. And because Tattadu loves her so much, he tells her, I'm going to try to change my appearance. So after he returns from this long journey and has been transformed into a handsome man, bearing even more riches, her older sisters become jealous. Before, when Tattadu was just a lowly caterpillar, the sisters felt safe. They could still maintain their high status over the youngest. However, once Tattadu was transformed into a handsome, rich man, far more handsome than their own husbands, a perceptible shift in status has taken place. It is at this point when the older sisters feel threatened by youngest. They do not want to lose face to the youngest sister, and in order to protect their status, they force their own perfectly good husbands to go on the same long journey to ask the gods to change their appearance so that they can maintain their status. Unfortunately, this backfires and the husbands turn into animals, which seems a fitting retribution for this story. The older sister's behavior was probably aimed at maintaining respect and admiration, but taken too far, it can lead to conflict within the family dynamics. Stories like Tattadu were told orally and were probably used to teach people of the dangers of this kind of entitled behavior and the dangers of greed and envy. So what did you think of this story? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please do leave a comment below. If you like this video and my other videos, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Please help me spread these Nusantara fairy tales. That's it for this video, but don't go just yet. Check out my other sibling rivalry videos in episode 27, 28, and 29, which I'll link down below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.